Hi there. My name is Kim, and I am here today to do some Yin Yoga inspired stretching and meditation with you. And so, I first off just want to say thank you for taking the time for yourself. I know I've been practicing yoga for nearly a decade now, but only really intentionally the last few years. And in 2020, this year, it has been what has kept me grounded, calm, sane, and honestly, some days it's just what's kept me going. And so I hope that this finds you in a place where after we spend the next little bit of time together, you will feel much more able to just keep swimming. Some of my favorite mantras will be included throughout this class. And this class is designed for someone who is maybe a little skeptical of yoga, is new to yoga, doesn't want to do yoga, but wants to take a break and their friend sent them this video, or just someone who I've sent this to. This is my little friend Tails here. He will potentially be joining us throughout the practice. He has really enjoyed me developing a home yoga practice, and so you'll see him throughout. And if you have pets as well, I invite you to invite them if they aren't distracting to join you. And if they are distracting, I invite you to just allow them to be there with you because I'm convinced, they know when we're trying to take care of ourselves and they like to join us in that. So we're going to get started here. And I'm going to stay seated, but I invite you to just take a minute and get yourself comfortable and lie down. You can lie down on your back, you can lie on your stomach, you can lie on your side, but just find a comfortable position where you can feel restful and begin to close your eyes if that's comfortable for you. And we're going to take a few minutes just to get ourselves here. I know when I practice yoga outside of this space here in my home, I often found that whatever I was dealing with before I went to class followed me into the first little bit of class. And I really appreciated the teachers who were able to get me to the class, even though I was in the class. So I invite you to just find a comfortable position. If you're comfortable, close your eyes and begin to pay attention to your breath. Begin to notice how, as you inhale, what does that feel like? Where does that go? Does your breath feel like it's filling your lungs? Does it feel like it's going farther? Do you feel like you're breathing shallowly? Is this the first time all day, all week, all year, or ever that you've noticed your breath? If so, that's fine. You're here now. Just be here now. Notice that. And take an inhale and begin to see if you can breathe deeper. See if you can feel that breath all the way down in the bottom of your lungs. And as you exhale, imagine that whatever you were doing just before this is leaving. It will be there. You're breathing it out. It'll be there once we're done with our time here together. So just inhale, feel that breath going all the way down into your lungs. And this time, see if you can feel that breath even lower. See if you can feel your inhale going all the way down to the bottom of your back. To that spot that maybe is a little bit stuck feeling or uncomfortable feeling because you've been seated or whatever you were doing before this. And as you exhale, I invite you to just push out any stress that you feel. Push out anything that you don't want to deal with, and push out anything that you don't have to deal with right now. The only thing that you need to be doing right now is inhaling and exhaling and listening to the sound of my voice. And as you take another deep breath, I invite you to begin breathing deeply using what I like to use as a 3-part breath, as a wave. I invite you to breathe in the breath into your stomach, into your chest, and into your collarbones, filling yourself up. Maybe your belly rises. Maybe you feel it inflating like a balloon. And then as you exhale, don't allow all the air to leave at once, but exhale from your collarbones, chest, and belly. So seeing that as a wave that's inhaling into your belly, your chest, and your collarbones, and exhaling from your collarbones, your chest, and your belly. And now do that a couple more times. And when you feel that you've gotten into a rhythm, I invite you to just begin to wiggle your hands and your wrists and your toes and your ankles. Just begin to feel those. Feel that if as you inhale, you can feel that breath in those places. If you can't, that's okay. If you have a pet with you, imagine that they are breathing with you, that as you inhale, they may rise. And as you exhale, they sink. And just allow yourself to sink into the ground and sink into this place. We're going to move through some stretches today that are inspired by Yin Yoga, which is maybe a different type of yoga than you've ever done or experienced. And maybe you know what that is, maybe you don't. Yin Yoga is my favorite type of yoga. It allows me the opportunity to move my body in really simple ways that produce really profound effects. And so as you take your next inhale, I invite you to bring your feet to the floor, knees pointed up to the ceiling, about hips width apart, and begin to just rock those knees side to side and see if you notice as you're breathing how that feels in your lower back. Just kind of getting a sense of feeling into our body. And we're going to move through, all of our poses will be on the ground today. And so these are poses that you can do anywhere that you can lay down at any time that you need to feel a little bit more grounded. 2020 has been a year of not feeling grounded for many people, and yet also feeling like we're having a chance to reconnect to a lot of things. And some of those things are comfortable to reconnect to, and some of them are not. But each day, each moment, we have our breath. And many people have had that chance changed for them this year, taken from them, or negatively impacted by any number of things, from physical illness, societal events, or other things. And so take this time for you to come back to your breath, come back to your body, and remind yourself that you are here right now, and you took some time to be here right now. So celebrate yourself and just be with yourself. So with your knees pointed up to the ceiling, I invite you to just allow both of your knees to move over to the left-hand side of your mat or whatever you're laying on. And as you move over to the left-hand side of your mat, I invite you to allow your knees to go as far as they can. And if they can reach the floor, great. If they can't reach the floor, I invite you to put something underneath them that helps them feel like they can relax. If you have a weight on top of you, great. That will allow you to stay even more grounded. But if you don't, that's okay too. Just let your knees fall all the way to the left, and let your right arm just stretch out straight to the right. With your left arm, you can either have it resting on your knees, above your head, or wherever feels comfortable for you. This is your time to feel into your body and reconnect and reground. So take a couple breaths here. Just inhaling, noticing what that feels like. Exhaling, letting anything go that you don't want to deal with. It'll be there later. And on your next inhale, bring your knees back to the center. Point them up to the ceiling and make any movements that your body is wanting to make. So sometimes I like to twist my knees left and right. And then we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Tails is really interested in being part of the entire first yoga class I ever filmed. And so he's a featured dog today. So inhale and exhale your knees over, drop them to the right. And this is sometimes in some classes called a supine twist. We're doing it a little bit differently because we're not bringing our knees in and twisting just yet, but allow your knees to fall as far as they can to the right. And just feel in if this feels the same as it did on the other side. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. We often like to think that our bodies are symmetrical, but in fact, they aren't always. We have organs that are on different sides of our body inside. We use different sides of our body in different ways, and we are not as symmetrical as we like to think. And for me, that's actually beautiful. It reminds me that no two moments are the same, and each moment is worth savoring. Each time that my little dog here wants some attention, it's worth offering that if I can. And so Yin Yoga is, as I mentioned, a little different than other types of yoga because we're not up on our feet as much. We're not more than likely sweating, but we are getting into the deepest parts of our body, which can get us into the deepest parts of our emotions, often called the myofascial system. And I'm not as familiar with that as some yoga instructors. That's not my expertise area, but I have used Yin Yoga for several years to get deep into my emotions and can attest that for many of us, our emotions are in our hips. We keep things stored there and they show up in many different ways. So on our next breath, inhale, move your knees back to the center. And what we're going to do now is we are going to continue laying down and move into banana pose. So stretch your feet out straight and stretch your arms above your head. And before we become a banana, let's imagine ourselves as a lightsaber or pencil, or just a long, thin line on the floor, stretching our hands as far away, our feet as far away at the same time. Inhaling and exhale, just sink and just sit here for a moment and think about why you're here. Think about what you want from this time. And keep that on your mind, because maybe that's what you'll get, or maybe not. Who's to say? So for banana pose, what we're going to do is move to the left side first. And so I invite you to keep your hips where they are, but move your left ankle over to the left side of your mat and move your right foot next to that foot. And if this feels like a ton of stretch, great, stay there. If you're looking for something else, you can lift up one foot and put it over the other foot or ankle and see how that works. If that's not what you're looking for, try and switch it to the other side. I noticed that all along my IT band and my right side, when I put my right foot over my left foot, I feel an entire stretch. And what we'll do next is you can't see the tops of my hands, but they're above my head, and we're going to move them also over to the left. And then you can grab onto one wrist with the other hand and do the same thing as you did with your ankles. Notice what feels like more of what you want to feel and what feels like something you can sit with for about 2 to 3 minutes. In Yin Yoga, we move into a pose and we stay there for 2 to 3 minutes. And the purpose of that is about allowing our bodies to experience discomfort and learn how to manage that. We don't ever want to experience pain during Yin Yoga, but we do want to get ourselves to about a 6 out of 10 on that discomfort scale and settle in. And your 6 out of 10 might be different than mine, and it might be different than yours tomorrow. But your 6 out of 10 is where you are working. And that is called a growth edge for many people and many things. And the growth, many people say that growth begins at the edge of your comfort zone. And I have learned that to be true. And so as you're sitting here with your feet moved towards the left and your hands maybe also moved to the left, notice what discomfort feels like for you. If you feel pain at all, change what you're doing. This is not about pain, and this is not for Instagram. There is not a goal here in mind. The goal is simply you finding what you need and your relaxation. And so take a couple more breaths here, thinking about what discomfort means to you, thinking about where your edge might be, and thinking about if you want to go past that, if you want your edge to be farther. And if you do, why? Is that because you feel like you're supposed to? You feel like the other people you've seen do this type of pose move differently and you should be more like them? Or is that because you know that you have something that you're looking to grow in? And that third option is where you should be focusing in this practice. This is about you, your body, and your time and your relaxation. And on your next exhale, I invite you to come back to the middle, and we're going to do the same thing on the right-hand side. So once you're in the middle, just take a breath, do anything that your body needs, wiggle out a little bit, shake your toes, windshield wiper your feet left and right, and then do the same thing on the right-hand side. So lift up your right legs, move them over right leg. If you have more than one, lift up both, but lift up your right leg and move it to the right side of your mat, and cross an ankle if you desire to. And then shift your hands to the right as well, above your head. And if moving your arms doesn't feel comfortable for you today, that's fine. That's okay. Any version of the pose is the pose. You taking the time to take time for yourself and notice your body and your breath is the goal here. Not looking a certain way, not feeling a certain thing, not feeling anything similar to what you might have felt in your last yoga class or what you'll feel in your next yoga class. Just feeling, pausing, and breathing. For me this year, I experienced a mystery illness that was more than likely COVID-19 earlier in the year, and I couldn't breathe deeply for approximately 3 weeks or so. And since then, there's different things in my body that I noticed that feel differently, some in good ways, some in just new ways. And so I was reminded really strongly of how important it is for us to take time to breathe and to appreciate our ability to do so. So take a couple more seconds, a couple more breaths, and just inhale and exhale, and just be grateful for the ways in which your body is able to keep itself alive just by this simple act. And on your next exhale, I invite you to come back to the center of your mat. We're going to move into something where we aren't laying as flat, but we are still going to be twisting and working on our lungs, noticing them, noticing where our breath goes in our body, and noticing our lower back. And so the next pose that we're going to do is called child's pose. And we're going to modify this into a twist as well. And so once you're laying back on your back, I invite you to roll over to your right side and come up to a seated position. And that can be any type of seat that you want. I'm sitting cross-legged, just waiting for you all. And once you're seated, I invite you to take a moment and notice if you feel any different. I encourage you to roll your shoulders a little bit up and back. Notice that. Notice if your neck feels a little shorter, longer, different. We're not judging ourselves, we're just noticing. And from here, we're going to do a quick twist before we come into child's pose remix. So inhale and lift your arms out to the side. And on your exhale, twist to the right side and put your left hand on your right knee and your right hand behind you. And on your inhale, I invite you to lift tall. See if you can feel like there's a string from the top of your head up from your spine. And lift up and look over your right shoulder, if you can. If not, that's okay. Any version of the pose is the pose. The purpose here is movement. And on your next inhale, lift your arms back up and come back to the middle. And on your exhale, do the same thing on the other side. Right hand on your left knee and looking over your left shoulder. Take a couple breaths here, just noticing your spine, noticing how it extends from the ground up to the top of your skull. Imagining that there's a light and that light is guided by the breath, breathing in from the ceiling and breathing all the way down to the ground. And then breathing out, sending that light back up through the top of your spine and back into the air. And on your next breath, I want you to imagine breathing in from the ground. So imagine that you're breathing in from the core of the earth, up through your spine, up to your skull, and then sending anything that you don't want back down into the earth. Just burying that, grounding that, and leaving that be for another time. So on your next inhale, come back to the middle and place your hands on your knees. And we're going to come into child's pose now. And so what child's pose looks like is you get onto your hands and knees. Your knees are about hips width distance apart. Your hands are in front of you, fingers pointing forwards towards the top of your mat. And this is called tabletop position. Some people like to stretch out their spine in this position with a cat-cow, which looks like inhaling and bending your spine where you're curving like this, and exhaling, bending into a cow where you're curving where your head drops. So inhaling into cat, exhaling into cow, and inhaling back to a neutral. And now for a basic child's pose, we're going to use melting heart to get there. So move your hands just a few paw prints forward. Keep your knees where they are. And just settle your heart towards the ground. And if your hips move back towards your feet, that's fine. We're going there in just a moment. But this is just to stretch out your shoulders. Remind yourself how long your spine is. And just notice where your breath is. So as you inhale, what does that feel like? Do you feel that in your shoulders, in your armpits? Do you feel that on the back side of the upper back behind your heart? And then what does an exhale feel like? Does it feel easier or harder than you expected? So on your next inhale, just take that in, notice that. And exhale, come back to neutral for just a moment to bring your hands back a little bit closer to you. Bring your knees about as wide as wide as your mat if that's comfortable, and put your big toes together. And then settle your hips all the way back onto your feet. And stretch, keep your hands where they are, stretching them out. And now you might begin to feel this more in your upper shoulders. And this is child's pose. And what we're going to do is we're just going to settle in here for about 3 minutes with our forehead on the mat, if that's comfortable for you. And just begin to rest here. Child's pose is a great pose. It's a transition pose for many, but it's also one of the most grounding poses that I can ever do. It's a pose that when I have a lot going on, sometimes I will just take this pose for 10, 15 minutes. I plant my forehead on the ground, settle in, and just relax. I'll put on some of my favorite songs, do this for 2 of 3 of them, and then continue on with what I'm doing. So take some time to just ground here. Notice what this feels like. Notice what it feels like to be face down on the ground. Notice if this feels easy or challenging or something different. Child's pose allows us to feel into our hips, allows us to notice sensation there. It also allows us to stretch out our lower back and notice sensation across the back of our back completely, from our sit bones all the way up to our shoulders, through our fingertips. And it can also be an incredibly, like I said, grounding pose, but also an incredibly vulnerable pose for some of us. I know for me, when I have a lot of emotions that maybe I'm not processing through, sometimes when I do child's pose, I cry. And crying is liquid emotion, and liquid emotion is emotion that you're working through. In our society, we're often expected to think of crying as something to manage or deal with or get over and push through, as if it's just something to be handled. My opinion is really different of that. Emotions, if we don't get them out of our body, can destroy our body. And so if you are feeling emotions come up for you, that's fine. If you want to cry, cry. If you don't. I have had a regular journal practice for several years now, and I often journal during or after yoga class. And if I notice that I'm not journaling, it probably also means I'm not practicing yoga enough, because the mat is where I stir everything up, and the journal is where I get it all out. So whatever works for you in your life, I encourage you to have a practice that allows you to check in with yourself emotionally and work through that. If that's running, great. If that's yoga, great. If it's different every day, great. My hope for everyone is just that you have a practice that you find that you can work through your stuff. I always encourage everyone to have a safe place to do that, whether that safe place is with you, with a mental health professional, with a family member, with all of the above, depending on different days. But you are an emotional being because you are a human, and 2020 is an emotional year. So if this practice is something that helps you stir that up, I encourage you to rewatch this as often as you need to. So take a couple more breaths just into this curled up child's pose with just your forehead on the ground, your whole body in somewhat of a crunched up position, but also extended position across your back. And next, we're going to move this into a twist. So from your child's pose, just lift up your head a little bit. Keep your hands where they are momentarily, but then lift one of your arms, lift your right arm is what I'm doing, and pull that arm through underneath your body so that your right hand is now, your palm is on the ground on the left side of your mat. And see if you can sink your hips back again, keeping your left hand straight out as it was, but your right arm is through. And this will stretch into your right shoulder and allow you to get a different kind of sensation. And if you can relax your forehead back down to the ground, you are more than welcome to do so. I am not able to do that today. My shoulders and upper back are a little bit tense. But if you can, great. So if you want to grab something to put under your head so your head can rest and relax, do that. We'll just be here for a couple breaths, and then we'll do the other side. So inhaling and noticing what this feels like, and exhaling and just sinking in and riding the wave of this sensation. On your next exhale, untwist that arm, bring that back out in front of you, and we're going to switch sides. So taking your left hand, moving it underneath your right arm, palm up, and settling back in. And sometimes I like to do this with my knees together. Sometimes I like to do it with them apart. It's really just depending on what feels good each day. And if you want to change up where your straight arm is, you are welcome to put it behind you, straight back. You're welcome to wrap it around, see if you can reach the other hip. Or you're welcome to just relax it and rest your forehead on your arm, on your hand. The purpose of this twisted child's pose is just to get into our shoulders a little bit. And for some of us, this feels like a hug, which in these times when maybe we're getting less hugs or different hugs or no hugs from people, this can feel really vulnerable as well. So if things are coming up for you, great. That just means that you are a feeling human being, and that is what we all are. Some of us push our feelings aside and it becomes really challenging to feel any of them. One of my favorite authors, Brene Brown, talks about you can't numb only the bad feelings. When you numb the bad feelings, you numb the good ones as well. So I encourage you to feel all the feelings, and that's, in my opinion, a sign of strength for you to be able to do that, notice that, and practice that on a regular basis. So on your next inhale, come back to a regular child's pose with both hands out. And we are going to move into my favorite pose, which in Yin Yoga is called Sleeping Swan. In other yoga classes, it's often referred to as pigeon. We'll practice it in kind of a remix way, depending on what feels good today. So from child's pose, come back up to that tabletop position. And what we're going to do is we're going to lift our right knee and move it to our right wrist. And when we do that, we're going to put our left ankle kind of at a 90-degree, we're going to make our knee somewhat of a 90-degree, and our left ankle will go near our left wrist. And our left leg will extend backwards. So as you'll see here, once tails is over there, my right knee is near my right wrist, and my left leg is behind me. And if you want to keep your toe flipped, great. If you want to leave it flat, great. Whatever feels good for you and your knee and your body. This is a very, very intense pose if you have never done this. It's my favorite pose, as I said, so I am able to get into this pretty deeply, pretty naturally, because I am used to doing that. But if you are not, I do not expect anyone to get this pose the same way that I do their first try. So you might want to put something underneath your hip, like a block, so that you can feel like you can settle down, keeping your toe under. A blanket rolled up. I forgot to mention at the beginning, but I often keep a blanket under my knees just because they're pretty sensitive to hard floors. Or this might feel completely impossible today for you. And if this feels completely impossible, there's another pose that I'll demonstrate right now that you can do laying on your back. It's called figure 4 pose. Lay down on your back, your knees pointed up to the ceiling like we had in the beginning, and you'll just lift up your right foot, putting your right ankle over your left knee, and just sit right here. If you want to pull your knee into your chest, you can add a little bit more of a stretch. But this is the similar pose to swan pose or pigeon pose. And the point is getting into our hips and stretching them out. So as I mentioned, hips can often be a place where we have emotions stored in our body that maybe we are still working through or don't realize are there. When I have tight hips, it often means I've got some emotional stuff going on, or I've just been seated all day and I will have emotional stuff going on if I don't attend to it. So take a couple breaths here, whether you're in figure 4 or sleeping swan. And if you want to take this pose deeper, you can come down onto your forearms, you can come down and put your forehead on the ground, or you can stay upright. The focus area here is just your hip. Noticing, breathing, seeing what it feels like to stretch out this clump of muscles here in your hips. On your next inhale, place your hands back flat. If you're in swan, and come back to that tabletop position. And I often need to stretch out my hips. Things might pop, crackle, snap, like a Rice Krispie treat. Make some hip circles potentially, making sure to go both ways. We're not symmetrical, but we do move in multiple ways. And then we'll do that on the other side. So lifting up your left knee, moving it to your left wrist, with that ankle going towards the right wrist. We want to make sure to protect our knee, so we don't need it to be a 90-degree angle. If you can, great. If you can't, great. Deciding with it, whether you want your toe flipped under or not, setting that up. And then getting to a place that you can sit for about 3 minutes. So if you need to do figure 4, you would be laying on your back, lifting up your left knee with your left ankle over your right knee and sitting there. But if you're in sleeping swan here, just settle into a place you can be for about 3 minutes. I'm going to do this pose with you because I'm noticing my left hip is a little bit more tight, and my right hip right here in the front is it's talking to me. So I'm going to do this with you all. Settle in, see where tails goes. So as you settle in here, just notice again, coming back to that notion of discomfort. What does discomfort feel like for you? And where in your life are you leaning away from discomfort or running away from discomfort? It's natural. You don't need to be upset at yourself for doing that. We as humans don't want to experience discomfort. Many of us don't seek out uncomfortable experiences, but if we're able to sit with discomfort in our bodies, we're much more able to sit with discomfort in our lives and respond instead of react. Make a choice as to how we respond to the world and the people and the situations in it, rather than react from a place of emotion and do something that maybe wasn't what we would have done if we had taken a minute to just breathe and think through. So notice what discomfort physically feels like, and notice if you can use your breath to sit with that. And on your next breath, as you inhale, just come back to your hands, or if you're in figure 4, just stay where you are and just notice. Notice if you feel any different than you did when we started this. Notice if you feel anything new, unexpected. Do you feel like you have been noticing things in your body that you often don't notice, have never noticed, or are surprised by? That's fine. So from here, we're going to move into dragonfly pose. So if you are in sleeping swan, just roll over to that left hip, keep that left leg bent, and just put your right leg out to the side. If you're in figure 4, come just to a seated position, extending your right leg out to the side, curling your left leg in. And I like to have a block next to me because we are going to lean to one side. So putting a block by your right knee, and just sit up. Just notice what sitting feels like again. We've been folding, bending, and things like that. So just notice what it feels like to sit. What does it feel like to sit with whatever is going on right now? Tails has found my bolster as his seat. So what does it feel like for you to be sitting on your seat? So what we're going to do here is just breathe in, and again, notice that breath going down your spine into the earth, and up your spine into the air, and up your spine from the earth, and down your spine into the earth. And as you inhale, sit up straight. And as you exhale, just lean over towards the right foot. And you can put a block either on the inside or the outside of your knee. I like to put it on the inside, and rest your forearm or your elbow on that, and then just lean over. So we're stretching our inner thigh here, our inner leg, and we're also stretching out our left side. And your left arm might feel like the awkward left arm when you're cuddling. And if that's the case, find somewhere that it feels comfortable. If you want to bring it up over your head, like you're reaching like an arch, like a moon, do that. If you want to put it behind you, do that. If you want to put it on your left knee, do that. Wherever it feels comfortable so that you can just settle in and sit here. And whatever feels comfortable for your neck, if you want to look down towards your knee, do that. Eyes open or closed, it doesn't matter. The focus of this practice is feeling your body and noticing your breath. On your next inhale, bring yourself back up to seated. And we're going to switch sides. So if you have a block or a prop on the inside or outside of your knee, just pick that up. Bring in that right knee, and now we'll find ourselves quickly in butterfly pose. Just fly ourselves through any discomfort in our hips, with our feet together and our hips bobbing up and down. And switch sides. Keep your right foot in, your left foot out to the left. Place that prop or block anywhere, inside or outside of your knee. Just inhale, seat up tall. And exhale, begin to lean over to the left. And again, you can put that right arm up over your head. You can leave it out like the awkward cuddling arm, put it behind you, or rest it on your right knee. It's up to you. It's your body, your breath, your practice. I'm merely here to offer suggestions of what feels good for me so that you can find what feels good for you. Because ultimately, this is about you feeling good in your body, feeling confident that you can withstand the discomforts of the world, the discomforts of your day, and taking care of yourself. Many of us are people that like to take care of others, which is a noble thing, but we also have to make sure we care for ourselves. So this is about taking time for you. No one else is stretching your body right now except you. So inhale, stretching in, feeling that along the right side. And exhale, maybe sink a little bit more, noticing how your inner left leg is burning, maybe more than it ever has in your life or recently. Just lean into that. Again, this is not about causing pain, but it is about noticing things and noticing sensation and noticing what it feels like to sit with that. Because we can control many things and not control many things. And focusing on what we can control is how we can be mindful and make it through life. So on your next exhale, come back up to the middle. Make those butterfly legs again. Fly out any of that discomfort. And we are actually going to move into Shavasana next. Because I think that if this is your first Yin Yoga practice, you have potentially moved around a lot of things. We've gotten into our hips, we've stretched out our back, we've twisted, we've introduced a lot of concepts that might have stirred up some things in our emotional bodies. And so I want us to spend an extended time in Shavasana. And Shavasana is, in some classes, called corpse pose. I like to think of yoga as an unbroken circle in a cycle. I follow a lot of different cyclical things just because my nature is to follow patterns, and there's many different ways we can follow patterns in life. And I'll tell us more about that as we settle into Shavasana, which is corpse pose and coming back to just resting and letting all of this digest. So taking your knees out in front of you, we're just going to roll ourselves down onto our backs. And if you have an excellent core, you can roll yourself down one vertebrae at a time. But some of us are not there yet, and we just have to use our elbows and elbow ourselves down. So lay on your back, extend your feet out. Take a big inhale, inhaling and filling up your entire belly, raising that little animal on you up. And exhale, just sigh it out your mouth. Do that 2 more times on your own, inhaling as full as you can, and exhaling out your mouth, letting everything sink into the ground. And 1 more time on your own. And as you're settling into Shavasana, I encourage you to notice what feels differently than when we started laying on the ground. Notice if your body feels more calm, Notice if you found muscles you forgot about. Notice whatever you feel physically or emotionally right now. I hope you'll spend some time after this practice and a little bit journaling, talking with someone, having some tea, and just reflecting on what this was like for you. If this was your first yin yoga class, your first yoga class, your first time taking time for you in a little bit. Just notice that, write that down, and celebrate that. You did an amazing thing by taking this much time for yourself today. There are many competing interests these days, and you chose to take time for you. And so lately I've been focusing on getting back into writing, but also getting back into noticing others writing. And a new poet that I found actually through the Instagram algorithm, the magic of that, is a woman whose name is Leah, but in her poetry she goes by Tosca Gemini. And I'm a Gemini, so I often reference two sides to things. Gemini through and through, born on a full blue moon, upcoming one on Halloween this year in 2020. So I'm going to read a poem from her, and then I'm just going to invite you to just reflect on what it means for you to move into something new, what it means for you to notice where you were before we started this, and notice if that's still the same you. You're still the same body, same person as you were, but noticing if you're leaving anything here on this mat. Is there anything that you want to let go of, that it's no longer serving you to have it on your mind or in your heart or in your life? And is there anything that you need to do about that? Noticing if you need to shed anything. Yesterday was a new moon, and so for me, I often like to use the new moon to think about what is it in my life that I want to change, do differently, or notice differently, and reflect on that and kind of work through the cycle of that for about 28 to 30 days. And then the next one, I notice how that went and go from there. So settle in, take a breath, exhale. And if your eyes are open and you feel comfortable closing them, I invite you to close them and just rest. I'll tell us when it's time to move. I'll tell us when it's time to move on. Just be here, resting, knowing that there's nothing else that you need to be doing right now except breathing. Inhaling, exhaling, repeat. It says, I'm ready to shed skin, peel away the calloused layers. That tough skin I had to make for myself in order to, quote, survive. The truth is, no one can touch me anymore. I'm shedding because I'm in my power. I'm getting rid of what was holding me back. I'm reclaiming my body, my desires, my passions. My time is my own. My life is my own. And I'm not going to worry about the opinions of others. I will burn and become. Tosca. And I like a million different things about that and that concepts of that, but this is about you. So take a moment, reflect on that, reflect on today, reflect on our time together and the choice that you made to be here. And just breathe. Spend the next couple minutes just in silence breathing together. And then I'll let you know when it's been a few minutes. If you are feeling the urge to move, I encourage you to challenge that urge and just lay here for the next minute and 40 seconds and just sit with whatever it is that causes you to want to do something else. In a minute and a half, you're free, obviously, to go do what you want, or you can turn this off anytime. But I encourage you to sit with your desire to move and lay there and just breathe. 30 more seconds, and then it will be time to move back into our day, our evening. Whatever was, still is. Whatever you had to do, maybe you still have to do it, maybe not. Be grateful that you took the time for you. And again, the little things are the big things. Life is a cycle, life is a circle, our breath is a cycle. And if we choose to follow the unbroken circle of an inhale and an exhale and repeat over and over and over and notice that more, there's a chance that we can begin to notice ourselves more and notice others more. In my opinion, and as Taylor Swift recently sang about, we're all mirror balls and we're all connected and we're all just mirroring back to the world pieces of themselves, pieces of ourselves. And when we start to notice more of our connectedness instead of our disconnectedness, even though many of us are separated and seeing each other mostly through this format, we can begin to care more. So I invite you to step back into your day with a little bit more awareness of your breath, awareness of your body. And so begin to wiggle your feet and hands and toes and body. And when you're ready, roll on over to a seat and come sitting up. And we'll just take one more breath together in just a moment. So I like to place my palms on my knees when I do this and just inhale. Exhale out your mouth and just thank yourself for being here today. And thank you for taking the time to spend this time with me, whether this is the first time you're watching this or not. Thank you for taking the time for you and spending that with me. And I hope that you have a great rest of your day, evening, week, and life. Till next time.